To Sherlock Holmes she is always woman. These words, uttered with a mix of admiration and grudging respect, paint a vivid picture of Irene Adler. In the annals of crime and deduction, few figures have captivated the mind of the legendary Sherlock Holmes quite like her. Arthur Conan Doyle introduces us to Irene Adler in A Scandal in Bohemia. This tale pits the sharpest mind in London against a woman who proves to be his equal in every sense. Prepare to step back in time, dear listener, to an era of gaslight and hansom cabs, where shadows held secrets. Our journey takes us to the heart of Victorian society, where a scandal threatens to topple a king, and only Sherlock Holmes stands a chance of averting disaster. Our story begins at the iconic address of 221B Baker Street. Dr. Watson finds his old friend and flatmate engrossed in a new and intriguing puzzle. Suddenly, the sanctuary of their Baker Street abode is breached by an unexpected visitor. Shrouded in mystery and concealed by a mask, the visitor's true identity remains a tantalizing secret. He identifies himself as a nobleman, his voice laced with an urgency that speaks of a desperate need for Sherlock Holmes's assistance. Holmes swiftly peels back the layers of disguise, revealing the visitor as the King of Bohemia himself. The king reveals a past indiscretion with a captivating opera singer named Irene Adler, who possesses a compromising photograph that could shatter his world. Intrigued by the challenge, Sherlock Holmes agrees to take on the case. With Dr. Watson at his side, the game is afoot. Holmes, a master of disguise, embarks on his investigation with zeal. Donning the guise of a common groom, he observes Irene, compiling a detailed inventory of her movements. Each detail is meticulously catalogued by Holmes's keen mind. With his trademark blend of logic and deduction, Holmes devises an elaborate plan to retrieve the compromising photograph. The trap is set, the players are in position, and the stage is set for a confrontation that will determine the fate of a king. The morning mist clung to Baker Street as Holmes put his plan into action. He shared a knowing glance with Watson, acknowledging the audacity of their scheme. Their carriage rattled through the cobblestone streets, drawing them closer to Irene Adler's townhouse. Holmes instructed Watson on his crucial role, emphasizing the importance of timing and precision. With a final word of caution, Holmes disembarked from the carriage, cloaked in the guise of an unassuming clergyman. A carefully orchestrated commotion erupted in the street before Irene Adler's home. Holmes, still disguised as the harmless clergyman, stumbled into the fray, seemingly injured and unconscious. Irene Adler, alerted by the sounds of the scuffle, rushed to her window, her curiosity piqued. Compassion, it seemed, was one of her weaknesses. Irene directed her servants to carry the injured clergyman into her home, Holmes allowing himself to be carried across the threshold. Inside Irene Adler's drawing room, Holmes lay still, feigning unconsciousness. Moments later, Watson, disguised as a street peddler, appeared at the window, hawking his wares. With a wink towards Holmes, Watson hurled a smoke rocket through the open window. The projectile erupted, filling the air with dense smoke, mimicking the effects of a raging fire. Panic ensued, and Irene Adler instinctively reacted, revealing the location of the hidden photograph. Amidst the swirling smoke, Irene Adler's movements were swift and decisive. She rushed to a panel in the wall, releasing a hidden catch. Holmes, watching from beneath heavy lids, committed the location of the hidden compartment to memory. Irene withdrew a small ornate box, confirming it held the key to the King of Bohemia's predicament. Holmes knew he was tantalizingly close to his objective. As the smoke began to dissipate, Irene Adler clutched the rosewood box tightly. Holmes, sensing his moment to act, feigned a return to consciousness. He slowly sat up, his gaze sweeping across the room, registering the expressions of relief on the faces of the servants. Their eyes met across the room, a silent acknowledgement of the game of wits that had been played. In that fleeting moment, time seemed to stand still. Holmes, his ruse successfully completed, thanked Irene Adler and her staff for their kindness. He played the part of the grateful clergyman to perfection. As Holmes stepped out onto the street, he cast a backward glance at Irene Adler's townhouse. A wave of exhaustion washed over him, mingled with a sense of satisfaction. He hailed a passing hansom cab, his mind already racing ahead, anticipating the moment when he would return to claim the photograph. The following morning, Holmes returned to Irene Adler's townhouse, eager to retrieve the photograph. After a wait, the door creaked open, revealing a bewildered maid. Irene Adler, the maid informed him, had departed early that morning, her whereabouts a mystery. Holmes, his composure momentarily shaken, stepped into the now empty drawing room. His gaze fell upon a small, sealed envelope addressed to him, resting prominently on the mantelpiece. The silence in Irene Adler's abandoned drawing room was deafening. Holmes stood frozen, Irene's letter clutched in his hand. His gaze fell upon the rosewood box, still resting on the table. He opened it slowly, half expecting it to be empty, but the box held a photograph, a portrait of Irene Adler herself. She had replaced the compromising photograph with one of her own choosing. This act spoke volumes of Irene Adler's character, bold and defiant, leaving Holmes with a newfound respect for the woman who had outsmarted him. Irene Adler's letter was brief, each word carefully chosen, a testament to her sharp intellect and understanding of human nature. She acknowledged Holmes's brilliance, even praising his elaborate scheme. Yet, there was a playful undercurrent to her words, a hint of amusement at having anticipated and outmaneuvered the great Sherlock Holmes. She explained that she had suspected her royal lover might one day seek to reclaim the photograph. A woman in her position, living in a world dominated by men eager to underestimate her, learned to anticipate such maneuvers. She had, she wrote, taken steps to ensure her freedom and her future, disappearing from London, leaving no trace for anyone to follow. She assured Holmes that the photograph posed no threat to the King of Bohemia. Her affection for him, however real it might have been, had faded. She had moved on, building a new life for herself, one where the indiscretions of the past held no power over her. As he read and reread the letter, Holmes felt a strange mix of emotions wash over him. Disappointment certainly at having his plan foiled, at being outsmarted by a woman he had initially underestimated, but there was also a grudging respect, an acknowledgement of her intellect and her spirit. In all his years of solving mysteries, of matching wits with the most cunning criminals, Sherlock Holmes had never encountered a woman like Irene Adler. He had built his reputation on logic, on his ability to see through facades and unravel the most tangled webs of deception. But Irene Adler had challenged his very core, revealing a depth and complexity he had not anticipated. She had turned his own methods against him, using his elaborate ruse to her advantage. She had anticipated his every move, disappearing from the chessboard just as he thought he had her cornered. The photograph she left behind, her own portrait replacing the one he sought, served as a constant reminder of her victory, a testament to the limits of logic in the face of human cunning and resilience. In that moment, as he contemplated the empty townhouse and the carefully worded letter, Sherlock Holmes experienced a shift in his perspective. He realized that the world was not simply a collection of puzzles to be solved, of deductions to be made. There were forces at play more complex than the most intricate ciphers, emotions and motivations that defied his usual methods of analysis. News of the averted scandal reached the King of Bohemia, a wave of relief washing over him. He had escaped the threat to his throne, his carefully constructed world still intact. He offered Holmes a generous reward, a token of his gratitude, but the detective refused, accepting only the photograph Irene Adler had left behind. From that day forward, Irene Adler became a legend in the annals of 221B Baker Street, her name forever linked with the case that had challenged Sherlock Holmes's intellect and expanded his understanding of human nature. She was, to him, the woman, a title that spoke volumes, acknowledging her unique place in his memory. The case of a scandal in Bohemia, though seemingly resolved, left an indelible mark on Sherlock Holmes. It served as a reminder that even the most brilliant minds could be outsmarted, that logic and deduction, while powerful tools, were not always enough to unravel the complexities of the human heart. And so, the echoes of that scandal lingered in the hallowed halls of 221B Baker Street, a testament to the enduring power of a woman who had, for a brief time, outshone the brilliance of Sherlock Holmes. The morning sunlight filtering through the swirling smoke from Holmes's pipe illuminated the photograph resting on the mantelpiece. It wasn't a trophy of a case solved, but a memento of a battle fought, and perhaps not entirely won. Irene Adler, in her elegant gown and enigmatic smile, seemed to gaze back at him, a silent challenge lingering in the air between them. Holmes, reviewing the events of the case, couldn't help but feel a grudging admiration for his adversary. She had been underestimated, dismissed as just a captivating face, a voice that could stir the soul. But beneath that allure resided a sharp mind, a strategist who had anticipated his every move, turning his carefully constructed plans to her advantage. He had approached the case with his usual clinical precision, breaking down the problem into its constituent parts, meticulously analyzing each detail. Yet, Irene Adler, fueled by instinct and a deep understanding of human nature, had operated on a different level. She had recognized the emotional undercurrents, the subtle nuances of the game, and had used them to orchestrate her own escape. There was a certain poetic justice in her victory. Sherlock Holmes, the master of disguise, the architect of elaborate ruses, had been outsmarted by a woman playing a role she excelled at, that of a woman underestimated, dismissed as a pawn in a larger game. He had underestimated her, and in doing so had handed her the key to her freedom. The King of Bohemia, relieved but somewhat bewildered, had departed 221B Baker Street with a lighter heart and a newfound respect for the woman who had once held his heart captive. He had escaped a scandal, but at a price, the realization that Irene Adler possessed a power that extended beyond a compromising photograph. She had walked away from a life that could have brought her wealth and influence, choosing instead the uncertain path of freedom. She was a woman who understood the precarious nature of power, the fleeting allure of a king's favor, and she had chosen to define her own destiny, leaving behind a legacy that whispered on the lips of London's elite. The whispers followed her, painting a picture of a woman of extraordinary wit and resilience. Some whispered of her new life, of a love found far from the gilded cages of royalty. Others spoke of her continued adventures, of her encounters with individuals of power and influence, her counsel sought after, her discretion legendary. But the truth of Irene Adler's life after the scandal remained a mystery, a tantalizing enigma that even Sherlock Holmes, with all his skills, could never fully unravel. She became a phantom, a legend whispered in hushed tones, a reminder that some secrets are best left buried, some mysteries better left unsolved. The case of a scandal in Bohemia held a unique place in Sherlock Holmes's memory. It challenged his perception, forcing him to acknowledge forces beyond logic and deduction. He kept her photograph in his study, a tribute to the woman who outsmarted him. It reminded him of his limits, and to never underestimate an opponent. The case marked a turning point in his relationship with Dr. Watson. Watson witnessed the impact Irene Adler had on Holmes. He saw the admiration in Holmes's eyes and respect in his voice. Irene Adler's legend lived on, woven into the fabric of 221B Baker Street. She remained an enigma, a symbol of feminine strength and cunning. She was the woman who outsmarted Sherlock Holmes, securing her place in history. Her story, passed down through whispers, remains one of the most captivating mysteries.